and welcome back to another day with Money, Finance, Freedom, your ticket to financial freedom. Today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin has been all over the news lately because it's hitting all-time highs over and over and over again. That, coupled with the celebrity and investment news that's been coming through Twitter, Instagram, and regular cable, has been pushing the stock higher and higher. Now, we've seen people like Elon come out and talk about cryptocurrencies, specifically Dogecoin and Bitcoin, and push this coin really, really high. Now, we're going to get into a new Square investment into Bitcoin, which was a $170 million investment, which represents about 5% of the cash or the total assets that the company had at the end of 2020. Before we get into all of this, please make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. I'll give you a second to do that. We're waiting. And now we're back into the video. So guys, we're going to see here again, as I said, Square purchased about 3,318 Bitcoins, expanding its position from October of 2020. Now, like I said, this is about 5% of the company's total assets, which is pretty important to understand because 5% as a fluctuating increase and decrease of assets is very difficult for a company to maintain when it comes to being publicly traded and for its overall investors' belief in the company. Remember, when we see small fluctuations in the stock market of 1 to 2%, we start to panic and we start to sell. With individual companies, when we start to see a 4, 5 to 10% increase or decrease in a company, we start to buy or sell. So if you're telling me that 5% of your company is now anchored to the fluctuation and volatility of Bitcoin, we start to see some concerns in the company. Now, that's the downside for Square. But what I'm focused on is the upside for Bitcoin. What this has done is it's basically like saying institutional investors in a specific stock or company are now buying into Bitcoin. There are institutional investors buying into Bitcoin. There are also institutions using Bitcoin. So Square is going to allow the transfer of Bitcoin to go back and forth much more smoothly. It's becoming part of everyday life. Now, if we look at the overall trend of Bitcoin over the last week, we saw it peak out at $58,000. Now, this was another high for Bitcoin. It constantly keeps trying to break that $60,000 mark. Upwards of $70,000 is most likely going to come soon. But at the end of this video, we'll talk about the projections. What I want to talk about is what has happened over the last few days. We've seen it start to fall off. Now, the market hasn't been performing really well. We haven't gotten our stimulus checks in the US. The Fed has not given us too much confidence about what it's going to do in the future, kind of just giving us the same blanket statement over and over and over again. I think there will be some updates there soon. But what does this all mean for Bitcoin? Now, Bitcoin obviously chases headlines a little bit. It waits for new investments and it waits for investors to give it the thumbs up or the sign of approval. And we see here that Cathie Woods is, the superstar head of ARK, said in Bloomberg interview that she is very positive on Bitcoin, very happy to see a healthy correction. So that correction she's talking about is right here. The reason she says this is a healthy correction is because Bitcoin keeps going up by 10% jumps constantly, 10, 15, 20% jumps. So to see it go down a few percent over the last several days is a great thing. We're seeing about a 15% decline of what we want in Bitcoin, but that's okay because as Cathie is stating, this is a healthy correction. We had a very similar correction with the overall market today. If we look at the S&P 500, we noticed that at the beginning of the day, we saw a huge drop off. This again is a healthy correction. It's considered a healthy correction because we don't want the market to grow unchecked. We want to see what happens when it fails. Does it bottom out and skyrocket all the way down to its deep, dark depths of what we've never seen before? Or does it find a balancing point and then start to grow again? And usually this takes a couple days, but with the market today, we have such confidence in it in the US, with what the Fed's been doing, with how our economy's opening back up, with how the virus is doing, the overall pandemic. And we got right back up by the end of the day, and we actually ended positive. Now, we're about at a neutral point right now, positive on the day, negative after hours, so we maintained pretty stable. Now, again, what does this mean for Bitcoin? We want to see how the rest of the economy is treating Bitcoin, so we need to look at who's actually using Bitcoin. Now we can see in this article that major retailers are now either using Bitcoin through either investment or allowing it to be a currency for the future. Such companies are Microsoft, Overstock, Home Depot, Namecheap, Starbucks, and several others. Now you're going to notice as I scroll through this article, a lot of these companies are rather large companies, but some of them are small as well, just latching on to the future of Bitcoin. And there's two different aspects here with Bitcoin. Most of these are just retailers or companies that are allowing the currency to be used in the future at a small portion. Now, Uber is going to be doing this, Tesla is going to be allowing you to buy cars with it, but more importantly, the other side is actually investing in Bitcoin. And that's what Square, Tesla, and a lot of these other tech companies have done, is they're using Bitcoin as a source of profit and a source of income. We know that Tesla bought Bitcoin at the beginning of this year. We're not sure exactly what the price point is, but we can look at the time frame for early January and see that they've made a healthy profit off of it. Now, this has allowed them to gain nearly $500 to $700 million in profit. Now that number is going to fluctuate as Bitcoin fluctuates, but we know that as Bitcoin grows, Tesla grows. And again, similar to Square, they are now anchored to the volatility of Bitcoin. So all of these companies that are allowing you to use it are actually going to help Tesla and Square and all of the other companies investing because they're making it more foundational. They're growing the currency and growing the use capabilities of it so we can use it as an exchange for the US dollar, which we're having a little bit of trouble with because we're worried about inflation, which we should see in March, April, and May, and we're basing the inflation based off of last year's numbers. And again, that's when the pandemic was, and we're looking at stimulus. So inflation is really going to grow over the next few months, but we have to remember that it ramps up and it ramps down. So stay cautious of it in the stock market and worry about where the US dollar is going in relation to Bitcoin. Now, as I finish scrolling through this article, we're going to see a lot about Bitcoin, but we're also going to notice Bitcoin's overall trend. Now, we see here that Bitcoin has grown roughly $10,000 a month since mid-October. What does this tell you as an investor? It tells you that Bitcoin is becoming more foundational and it's trading like a stock. It looks actually like it's trading more like a SPAC, if you ask me, with this rampant uptick similar to the CCIV growth. Hopefully we don't see a dive like we saw with CCIV. But if you're looking at this on a traditional trading scale, you're noticing that it's growing, falling, growing, and falling. It has a lot of green, but it also has a lot of red. If we were to zoom into this graph, we would notice that we have 10% jumps, 2% pullbacks, 10% jumps, 2% pullbacks, and this is what we want to see in stocks. It means that we're hitting higher highs, and then we're bottoming out, we're finding a new balance point, and then we're growing again, similar to how the stock market trades. Now, Bitcoin has not traded like a stock. Why? It's a currency, first off, and second off, it's Bitcoin. It's entirely volatile. It has no real grounding. We don't know where it's going, and we can't base it on any real value. Now, people will tell you differently, but it's really hard to gauge the value of Bitcoin in the future when we don't know how it's going to be used. So this is why it's important to understand Bitcoin at its fundamentals, but also understand where it's going and know what companies are investing, such as Square, Tesla, Microsoft, because that is what builds the foundation for allowing Bitcoin to be a real transactionable currency. So again, at the end of the video, we're going to talk about where is Bitcoin going. So we see here that QCP Capital states that the options market is letting us know certain predictions for Bitcoin. Now we have a 10% chance of $400,000, a 15% chance of $300,000, a 30% chance of $160,000, and a 50-50 chance of $100,000. And this is per Bitcoin. So if I saw a 50% growth in my overall asset, I would take it. I have a 50-50 chance of a 50% growth. I'm going to take a small percentage of my portfolio and put money into it. Now, that's just my opinion. Remember, guys, this is not financial advice. This is just what I think is going to happen in the future, what I'm going to be doing with my money, but by no means should you be scoping your financial plan around me. This is just what I think will happen in the future. Hopefully I get a track record with you. You come back to the channel and you see that what I've been saying is happening. Now, I called out CCIV before $20 a share, and we saw it go much higher. Now, we saw a major correction today, so keep an eye out for what's going to happen with that. Let me know if I'm right. We did take some profits right before we talked about buying the rumor, selling the news. We did a good job with that. And now we're going to reinvest and see where it goes in the future. I believe Lucid is going to be around for a long time. So make sure you subscribe to the channel to come back for more videos like that. And more videos like this on Bitcoin. We're going to be having big predictions overall. So again, like, subscribe, comment, hit that bell, and come back for another day. Thanks, guys.